By the way, that Capitol building is larger than the Capitol building. Oh, nice driving. Behind me is the 2019 Infiniti QX50. And as you can tell, it's a great looking car. Normally though, I show these cars right up front, get inside, start them and go, but today we're just gonna walk away from it. But I wanna show you some things from a different perspective. I think that's good enough. We'll start with the key. It has something here that your Audi Q5 doesn't have. It's called remote start. Let's go ahead and turn that thing on. You just hit lock and then you hold down the button. Starts up. Done. Your Audi Q5 can't do that. Something else your Audi Q5 can't do, from this distance, can't close the trunk from the key. You have to be within like 10 or 12 feet on the Audis. On this Infiniti, this is about half the distance I was able to successfully close this trunk from. So right then and there, why would you buy an Audi Q5? Well, I'll tell you a few things about this car and you can make that decision for yourself. Oh, by the way, if you had a Lexus right about now, you'd wish you had this Infiniti because the engine is still on. In the Lexuses, the ES, the NX, the RX, if you remote start it and open the door, the moment you open the door, the engine shuts off. In the Infiniti, we're still running. And by the way, this is why you would get the Infiniti over an Audi or a Lexus. Look at this interior. We have great suede here. We have stitching and leather and wood. It's everywhere and it's beautiful. And it is so smooth. Of course, these are vented seats. And we have easy ingress egress. Let me just actually get this so that we don't have to hear these fans over my microphone. What we'll do is we'll close the door and I will put my foot on the brake and hit the start stop button. As you'll see here, it says to get into drive. I have to turn the car on again. As I do that, the seat moves. My seat moves into the driving position I had it in last. That's a setting you can change. You don't have to have the seat go back when you open the door, things like that, but that's what I've set here. What I'll do is turn the fan speed down so you can hear me a little bit better. And I'll start breaking the bad news to you. If you are an Infiniti or a Nissan fanboy, you probably already know this, but I gotta repeat it. This is an all-wheel drive vehicle. It has a variable compression engine, the first of its kind in the world. It took 20 years to develop, and I'll get into that in a moment. The problem here, in my opinion, is that it has a CVT transmission, which means it's basically like a rubber band. And when you combine this rubber band style transmission with a rubber band style engine, which I'll explain, what you end up here in this trim level with this sort of interior and this much detail, suede, panoramic roof, it's just over the top these days. This is $57,000. Now, if you're shopping for a Lexus RX or a BMW X3 or an Audi Q5, this won't be a turnoff because look at this interior. I mean, just look at this detail. Is it worth it? Yes, for the interior. How does it drive? Well, let me put my seatbelt on and show you. Alright, first of all, we know we have keyless entry, keyless start. We have a funky gear selector here. It's something out of the QX30, which is also very Mercedes-Benz like. We have electronic parking brake, electronic hold, and drive mode, which I've never really had to use in this car, so I'm not going to talk about it. It's the difference between sport, eco, and standard. But if you are shopping for any Infiniti at the $57,000 price range, my opinion would be just get the Q50 Red Sport, the sedan with the 400 horsepower twin turbo V6. If you want this sort of interior, which you cannot get in a Q50, the QX50, which is what this is, gives you so much more. But what it won't give you so much more of is the performance that you would expect from an Infiniti. Now, this is a great attempt at fuel efficiency and a great attempt at a car for maybe a mom or a real estate agent, because let's just face it, I don't think I'd buy one of these over a Q50 Red Sport. But let's put this in. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, they've done some things here with their headlight controls. They've moved it here rather than the traditional stock. So they've lined this up for me finally, but this doesn't do much. And it has auto high beams and everything, and it has great LED headlights, but they've taken this, what looks like, straight out of BMW. It's very familiar, and for most of you, I think you'll be fine with this. You'll hardly use any of these functions, and I'll get into this one in a moment. But first, the one thing that perplexes me in this car is really just this gear shift lever, because I can take the parking brake off and I can put it in drive by pulling back, and I can roll forward just like this. However, I have always been befuddled by this thing to get it into park. You have to push this button. But what happens, for instance, if you don't push this button and you roll up into a parking spot like this, and then you basically get out? Well, with my foot on the brake, if I open the door, it warns me to shift in the park. I can actually still roll forward. Now, in an Audi Q5, if you open the door while you're in drive, parking brake turns on. That's not happening here. So I would advise Infiniti to fix this right away, because not that it has rolled on me, but you don't put it in a forward position to put it in park. You push this button. Now, I have a Chrysler 300, and people have complained about that rotary knob, and yeah, it may take a little bit of getting used to, but I've had this car for almost an entire week, and I'm still not used to pushing that park button. Now, the start-stop button will allow you to turn the vehicle off. So if you roll forward and you find a parking spot, and let's just say you keep it in drive, if you turn the car off, it ends up in park automatically. And you open your door, the seat rolls back, car is stopped, but the parking brake isn't set. So there are a few things in here. I know this is a pre-production vehicle, so it may not be like this when you test drive one at the dealer, but it's just a little bit of a confusion aspect that I think you should know about. But let's get back in. Let's roll the window down, put this puppy in drive, and we'll go for a quick little drive. Now, I'm not going to talk about horsepower because this car has variable compression. And what that means is it swings between 14:1 and 8:1 for compression ratio, which is essentially allowing you to have great performance and great fuel efficiency, but only one at a time. So it's kind of like this espresso cup. 8:1 is this espresso. You want a quick boost, you want a shot of something, you get espresso. 14:1 is when you're idling or cruising along just like this, and it's more or less like drip coffee. You take your time, you have 12 ounces, you got a large cup, and you're spending your whole morning drinking 1 or 2 cups of it, and you just kind of go along with your day. You're not really feeling an impact. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about when we use this menu here, which gives you a display or an idea of what this thing is like. So we click on this button here, and then we end up through these menus, and one of the menus is that one right there, variable compression turbo. So in eco mode, we're basically at 14:1, and at power it's 8:1, and everything in between there, the compression ratio is actually variable. It's not on or off or this or that. It works its way to it. And then we have our turbo boost, which right away, I'll tell you, when I first drove this car, I thought it was slow. And I think a lot of people have told me that they've driven this car and they thought it was slow. And I'll say, it doesn't have bite off the line like you would expect from an Infiniti. But In the city, it doesn't matter, does it? But when you drive along, as it changes that compression ratio, what happens is you end up feeling this rubber band sort of power delivery. And it is kind of fun. It's almost addicting. It's sort of like, and this is weird, but it's sort of like a diesel, like a little 4-cylinder diesel with a manual transmission. You get this wave of torque. The only difference is that on the diesel, the torque is down low in the rev range. In this car, with the variable compression and the turbo and the CVT, the surge or the wave of torque or everything that happens is way at the top of the rev range. It's very old school with power delivery, like 80s old school, but at the same time, it is pretty fuel efficient. And so when I looked at the press release for the QX30, they actually said in their second paragraph that the variable compression turbo is designed to deliver diesel-like efficiency without the emissions. Well, I'll be the judge of that on my other channel, Diesel Drives. So on Diesel Drives, I'm going to do a road trip from Austin to Dallas, and we'll gauge the fuel efficiency with that drive. You can watch that video when I post it. I'll put the link in the description or above here somewhere. But for here, on New Car Spin, we're going to talk about just the overall package of this Infiniti. So what we're going to do is we're just going to head out here. Plenty of room. We're going to go this way. Floored. And you can see the gauges and the dials and the speed pickup, and you can hear it. And it sounds a little angry, a little throaty, but it doesn't sound cool. It doesn't sound awesome. It just sounds like a CUV. But it has tech, and I'm going to show you that tech now. Actually, to be very thorough, I'm just going to show you the real downside of this car. And you'll see it right away, and you'll even hear it yourself. So in the city here, stop and go traffic, this is very easy car to drive. We have a button here that allows you to have radar cruise, and it will steer the vehicle. It does all the latest kind of stuff you'd expect in a new car at this price range, and I'll show you that after we get up this little hill. The biggest problem I have with this car is with this variable compression and this CVT, it doesn't do very well up hills. So if you live in a place with a hill like this, it just seems to want to be efficient all the time. And I find myself constantly demanding more from the gas pedal. It's just, I don't know, a hill seems to be the biggest problem. So if you live in a hilly area, if you're in places like California where you got the mountains and things, and you are in a hilly neighborhood, I could see you not wanting this car. In the desert, like Phoenix and something like that, maybe the Valley of California, if you're just commuting and stuff, this is an okay car. You got a lot of features here that the Audi and the Lexus can't do. They can't deliver this. The only downside to this car really is I'm 5'10". Actually online I'm about 6'1", and it's this headrest. You can tell it's pushing my neck forward, and it's quite uncomfortable. And it was very uncomfortable on the drive down here from Dallas. So the only downside really is this funky gear shift selector, the CVT, and while these zero gravity seats are nice and comfy on most of the areas, the only downside is the neck from this headrest pushing me forward. I can't adjust it any other way. Now this is pre-production, and it might be different in the dealers, but for me, this is a deal breaker right here, this headrest. Now I could get all Alexon Autos on you and show you how much space is in the back, but someone's already done that, and I'm not going to waste my time. You can watch their videos. I would show you the interesting quirks and features, but beyond the gear shift lever, this thing really doesn't have any. So unless Doug DeMuro gets his hand on one, if he can, then go watch his video, and I'm sure he'll tell you all the funky little things about it. But in general, what I want to do is just basically drive this, and it's taken 6 days so far to get a comfort zone. And that comfort zone is basically, this will deliver power if you put your foot down. The only thing is, you never want to touch the drive mode button. Let me close this sunroof while we're at it. You just press the button here and it will bring the shade all the way to the front. It takes some time because it's a huge shade, but it's a very nice, effective shade. The drive mode button I'm talking about is right here. So we put in an eco mode, and what happens is it does this thing called eco pedal. And the pedal actually does force feedback to prevent you from pressing the pedal too aggressively, to kind of give you more of an economic driving impression. And it's terrible. It's just like that BMW 5 Series 4-cylinder I drove a while ago. The guy put it in eco mode, and I said, that's terrible. That's just outrageous. And it's really just a mode to meet the requirements. But here we are, I'm pulling out on a corner, and this is floored. Look at that. Oh, we're not even doing 60 yet. So that eco mode button, I think, is just too dangerous. And luckily, this car defaults to standard mode every time you get in. So just leave it in standard. Don't touch it. Sport mode, personal mode, if they're for you, you have to get into that mode every single time. This vehicle is not going to deliver unless you understand how it delivers. And that is basically, you don't really need to use this gauge, but you need to use this gauge. You need to understand how much power you have on tap to pass. And once you do, holy shit. I mean, this thing it's elastic. You put your foot down and you want to pass people on the freeway or on the streets, and it is elastic. And if you have this engaged while you're driving, it becomes spastic because it doesn't really deliver the power right away down low when you're going slowly. When you're moving along 30 miles an hour plus, it's quick. And I wouldn't call it a sports car. This is not a Q50 Red Sport 400. What you're getting for your money here is the latest tech and the nicest interior, apart from the QX50, the nicest interior you can get in Infiniti these days. But driving along here on an unusual, this is not usual for traffic. This is a Sunday and it's Mother's Day and I am in Austin. So let's just see how far we can go here. We've got this auto drive mode on, and we're going to set the cruise control to 35, and you'll see here that it is keeping a gap, but it's not steering. When that steering wheel turns green, it's going to be steering on its own. So I'm just going to keep driving myself here. The 2-screen setup works fantastically because you always have your map, and then you can do all your cell phone or audio controls down here. You have settings for HVAC, you have everything you need here. And a lot of people hate the 2-screen setup, but if you think about it, Audi's going that way. Audi used to do the stupid knob. So here we have 2 screens and a knob. That knob is in the Q50 as well. And basically what it does is it allows you to zoom in and out of the map, and it allows you to turn on the camera. And here we are. I'm gonna just break this myself. We're gonna go through this menu here as well. So this is the activation of blind spot monitoring, lane departure, and forward collision warning. And you'll see here it's active when that button is pressed. When I deselect it, it's off. When you start the vehicle, every time, this is off. And that's unusual because most of the time on other vehicles it's on and you have to turn it off. But this time you are getting the opposite. And why is that? Why would Infiniti do that? The reason is they have 2 drive assistance systems running in this car. They have a standard one, which has the force feedback pedal and things like that for anti-collision. And then they have the autonomous driving mode. Without that button pressed though, the car doesn't do what a normal Infiniti does. You have to have this button pressed, then it will automatically brake for you. And that's without using cruise control. So there's a lot of stuff going on with tech in here, and it's very confusing. But all you have to know is, if you want it to do a lot of the driving for you, in the sense of braking and keeping a safe distance from the vehicle in front, let's just say you're a real estate agent and you're looking at addresses or you're looking for something, make sure that button's pressed. If you're driving in stop and go traffic on the freeway and you just don't have the energy or the willpower to drive like everyone else is, you press that button, you set your speed on cruise, and it will take care of things for you. What you get here is a package of tech and luxury and ambiance that Lexus, BMW, and Audi are going to have a hard time giving to you at this price. Infiniti is saying that this is providing sort of like diesel style torque levels, diesel style efficiency. And what you might not know is that back in the day when people had to get diesel style anything, they paid a price premium for that of about $3,000. This variable compression engine isn't an option, it's standard. So if it's standard, what is the extra cost of getting this car to begin with? If you don't have any options, then what is the real benefit of having this car? How much is it really going to save you? How much is it really going to perform like a diesel? And so I'm going to do a road trip video on diesel drives, and you can watch it there. But in the meantime, I'm just going to drive this like it was meant to be driven, in the city, casually, sort of like eco-chic and very sanctuarial. That's a new word, I just made that up, sanctuarial. So let's see if it's going to recognize this car. Yep, it's recognizing it. It's slowing down. I'm going to speed up and go right by it. Here we are, by the way, on South Congress. Absolutely lovely time here right now because there's nobody around. This is fantastic. And this Capitol straight ahead. That's the state capital of Texas, and there's their Capitol building. Amazing. By the way, that Capitol building is larger than the Capitol building. Oh, nice driving. That Capitol building is bigger than the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So there you go. If you like this car, please leave a thumbs up. If you dislike it, please tell me why in the comment section below. And if you dislike my review, let me know in the comments below. I read every comment. And if you want to know what this is like on the freeway, or how efficient it is, or what it's capable of doing on the freeway, definitely watch the next video that I'm going to publish on diesel drives. Thanks for watching.